All right, buckle up. This car has a spoiler. I just got out of Terminator Dark Fate, and what an interesting experience that was. Okay, let's just jump right into the spoiler stuff. So, Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, is alive at the end, which really surprised me. I thought she was going to die. I figured that the Schwarzenegger Terminator would be destroyed, but I figured they were going to try to set the stage for this franchise to continue without either Schwarzenegger or Linda Hamilton. And now it looks like, I mean, the way that Connor drove off with Danny kind of into the sunset, as it were, and, you know, Connor's last words, or something along the lines of, you have to get ready, you have to be prepared, says to me, okay, so she's taking her under her wing now, and she's going to be training her to be this great resistance leader in the future. You know, she's essentially the new John Connor, and Sarah's now going to be preparing her for that future. I think that's really cool in one sense, because now, you know, it kind of, I suspect it was motivated in part by kind of a desire to have female empowerment for this series. I mean, that's kind of definitely a movement in entertainment media now, and I'm not opposed to it. I don't like when it's heavy-handed, you know, and it feels like it's just being done for the sake of being done. But I wouldn't necessarily call what they did here heavy-handed. It was just noticeable in kind of a meta sense. It's like, okay, this is going on in entertainment right now, and they're doing this thing too, you know. But it really, it actually brings, in some ways, this series back to what it always was. I mean, from the get-go, this series started being about Sarah Connor being this really strong, ultimately strong female protagonist. Yes, she was going to, you know, give birth to the chosen one, John Connor, but by the end of the first Terminator movie, you know, she is becoming the hardened combatant, the hardened survivor, maybe I should say, that she needs to be in order to train John Connor. So, in a sense, Sarah Connor's role is even more important than John's, because she made John who he would become, you know, as that resistance leader. And so now what they've done basically is, okay, they've killed off John Connor, but we discovered that, you know, maybe kind of implicitly, I think it's very this connection is very subtle, and not necessarily all audiences will make it or are meant to make it, but I think you can definitely say, no, Sarah Connor, not Danny, Sarah Connor even, you know, not even Danny, Sarah Connor really is the chosen one that's going to make the difference in the future, because she is like the trainer of resistance leaders. That's kind of the final note I'm left with, as I think of Sarah Connor and her role in this entire franchise, you know. I was distracted through chunks of this movie because I was trying to make it work with the other movies that have been released. Try to figure out some kind of time travel, you know, rules that would allow this to still in some way recognize at least the partial or previous existence of these other movies, you know, Terminator 3, Salvation, and Genesis. So I got distracted by that. I'm still working that out. I'm still gonna try to have some kind of weird movie logic that can make it work, because I really still don't like the idea of this movie asking us to ignore Terminator 3, Salvation, and Genesis, because I didn't think any of those were bad movies. Certainly one or more of them fell significantly short of Terminator 2, but I don't think any of them were out-and-out bad movies. At least they weren't bad experiences for me, you know. Terminator 3 was a lot of rinse and repeat from Terminator 2, and the other two movies went in very different directions, but similar to the Alien movies, I feel like each one is its own animal. They make some steps that some people don't like, but at least they're doing unique things, you know. So anyway, back to this movie. John Connor dies. They brought back the actor that played the original John Connor. I heard this in, news media reports. But evidently they just brought him back so he could do capture, apparently, and de-aging so that he would be there to get killed as a kid, which I thought was great, that they, as well as they did. I can still see hints of CG trickery, but I was asking myself, okay, now, what kind of trickery are they using to do this? Because this is really pretty impressive stuff, the de-aging on Linda Hamilton and Schwarzenegger and on the John Connor actor, really impressive. But yeah, he gets killed from the get-go. I was wondering, how are they going to make this clear and obvious how I should follow this movie? And they, right off the bat, made it clear through a flashback what was monumentally different about this timeline, So, but again, I wish they would have presented it as some kind of a timeline in continuity change to the timeline instead of a meta continuity, change being made by producers. Anyway, so what else? Other spoilers. I kind of was waiting for the liquid half of that Terminator to show up again. I guess it was more, it seemed to be kind of, destroyed by, like, what was it, not an EMP, but like some kind of explosion or something like that. But I thought, well, I could see it coming back from that. I mean, the T-1000 came back from something that, was about as harsh, and so it's weird that they didn't address that. I guess I'd have to watch it again. Like I said, I was distracted throughout the movie trying to make it work in the continuity, and so there was peppered moments throughout this experience where I was, not fully present mentally. I thought it was interesting what they did with the Schwarzenegger Terminator, and how he had he raised a family and stuff, and had really become like a normal person in many ways, living this normal life. But I thought that they made it work in continuity. They established, at least in the theatrical cut of Terminator 2, that the T-800 has a learning computer, and so, and since it would have no purpose once it's had carried out its orders, it makes sense that it would try to maybe extrapolate some kind of purpose from its circumstances, and I liked how they kept a strong differentiation still between what a machine is capable of evolving into and what a human is. I think that him making it clear that he could never really love his family the way that a human does, I thought that was great. I really dislike it when movies imply that machines can evolve on their own in some way to become persons in the same way that humans are persons, and have real emotions in the same way that humans have emotions. And so even though they made him a sympathetic character, I still was able to watch him and feel like I am watching a machine, and I do not have to be emotionally invested in this as a person at all. I can say in my mind, as they almost say with the script itself, that he has just created an approximation of moral values and virtues that he adheres to, and which he's simulating love, and just simply by prioritizing a certain set of activities. So yeah, I thought that the treatment of AI in this movie continued to be the kind of treatment I like for AI, and that the Terminator movies have been known for, which is to say, no, they're never really human. They can really approximate them and simulate them in ways that maybe even would fool us, but they are not human. It is a simulation. It is a superficial, though totally foolproof maybe to human senses, a simulation nonetheless of human emotions and personhood. What else? Man, I feel like there's so much, because in my review it's going to be hard to talk about the story at all, because so early in the movie they're spoiling things. There are revelations that really continue throughout the movie. And oh yeah, okay, so let's talk about the deaths, I guess. So the other death was, well, the T-800, died, just was destroyed, and that was, and his final word for John, I thought was great. I thought he was going to say it before he fell into the pit area so that Sarah could hear it, but I'm assuming that maybe we're supposed to believe that she did hear that, even though he was way far down there, you know. But I kind of predicted that last line. I just didn't predict the timing, you know. And by the time he fell into the pit, I was like, now I hope he says it, because it would be a beautiful line for him to be his last line, you know. I also thought it was interesting that at another point in the movie, I'll come back to deaths in a second, he said, you know, that he warned his family that this day would come where he would have to send them off to safety, and he would have to go and, you know, deal with the past that has caught up with him, you know, and that he said, and that I won't be back, you know. And I felt like that was a bit of a meta moment too, that was kind of telling us as an audience, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger's last time as the Terminator, you know. And also, because his timeline was destroyed, Skynet doesn't exist, so T-800s, that model, the Cyberdyne Systems 101 model that looks like, you know, Arnie, there's no reason they're telling us that timeline has been wiped out, so we're not going to see that model Terminator again. The only reason he was there is because he was sent, presumably, to the past at some point before the past was changed, and, you know, by Sarah and John Connor in Terminator 2. So yeah, this I believe that was an indicator to us as an audience, he is not coming back. But Sarah Connor, you know, Linda Hamilton, maybe. It looks like she will. Of course, they could write her out and just, you know, have a scene at her gravestone where Danny gratefully says, she taught me everything I need to survive, or whatever the crap, you know. But it looks like she's going to be in the next one. But the human died. What was her name? Grace. Grace died, which I guess shouldn't surprise me. That's kind of what they do in these movies, you know. Whoever the rescuer is that's sent back in time from the future dies. I think the one exception would be in Terminator Genesis, where they change the timeline, you know, so that Kyle Reese lives, and so does Pops, the Terminator. So anyway, that's kind of, they're following that model still. So I don't mind that. And, you know, we won't see that actress again because she wasn't a model off of a assembly line. She was a human character, you know. So, well, I guess, who knows what they can do. They can fast forward the timeline and grow her up, you know, to her adult self. Who knows what they'll do. But by that time, Sarah Connor, I think, will probably be too old, you know, to be gallivanting around, along with Linda Hamilton, of course. I don't think there's anything else that's spoilery that I want to talk about. Maybe I'll just speculate on where the series would go from here. I had kind of thought that that by the time this one was done, Sarah Connor would be dead too, that she would have her swan song and her sacrificial death of some kind, but that's not what's happened. So I'm really surprised by that. And I think what this ending does tell us is that, and I think I heard IGN maybe make this remark or something, that this series can certainly move beyond Schwarzenegger, and I would say it can even move beyond Sarah Connor. And honestly, I think the seeds for that were planted in the Terminator TV series, where we saw Terminators being sent back not just to kill John Connor, but to go and kill, like, people who would be his key lieutenants in the Resistance, you know. And so I think that, you know, we can have a movie franchise where they go from one person to the next, you know. And also, you know, another seed that was planted was in Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. You know, that's the movie that whenever they've tried to reboot this series, they always want us to forget that one. But what that movie established was that Judgment Day is going to happen not simply because of Cyberdyne and Skynet. Well, maybe Skynet was still a thing. Cyberdyne. It won't necessarily happen because of Cyberdyne. It will happen because of humans and human nature and what we choose to do with technology, you know. Because they had saved the world from Skynet, presumably, but then it still happened anyway. The future was just delayed. The existence of Skynet was simply delayed, you know. And really they picked up that torch and kind of ran with it. And this one, they did kind of reestablish it with Sarah's dialogue in this movie, saying, you know, those, you know, whatever she insulted them with, they never learn, you know. And so that's another thing that I think is really nice about this franchise is what it says about human nature. What it says about humanity, that we are not careful, and we focus so much on advancement that we don't and without worrying about morals. I think this series has always been good for that, in terms of its view of technology and in terms of its view of humanity and the value of humanity. So it's interesting. This is a sci-fi series that I think gels very well with theism and with the dual nature of humans as both physical and spiritual. I think it gels really well with that, and most sci-fi movies do not. So this franchise continues to stand out. This was a movie that I really did enjoy. I need to watch it again without being distracted by thoughts of how to make it work with the rest of the movies, which I'm probably going to spend some time doing right now. So, all right, that's it. Bye. Okay, I'm cheating with my spoiler car thing a little bit. I wanted to record a little something. I want to try and work out a timeline, okay? So, let's see what we have so far. We've got the original Terminator, all right, followed by Terminator 2, the events of Terminator 2. That after this is where things get wonky. We have Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, right? And then this is where things get... Or wait, no. We got Terminator... Where's Salvation? Oh, here it is. Okay. Terminator Salvation jumps into the future, okay, after the bombs go off at the end of 3. And then we've got Terminator Genesis, which involves them sending a Terminator back from the future to screw with the timeline and basically send a reprogrammed T-800 to take care of Sarah Connor. I can't remember why they did that. But I'm thinking... Oh, crap, what am I thinking? I'm thinking that Genesis has to be the last movie, because that just screws with the timeline. John Connor's a villain, and so by the end of this one, Sarah and Kyle Reese are together. Kyle Reese survives, but John Connor may not even be born. That's not clear what's going to happen there. Their fate is kind of open, and Pops, the robot, is traveling with them to just fight off Skynet, however it may keep coming at us. So things get wonky with this one. It really gets set. The timeline gets so... The reset button is hit so harshly. You can't get from the end of this movie through the original 2 movies again. It changes, it wipes out the existence of those 2 movies. And so we can't have this one take place like conceptually prior. I don't want to say chronologically prior. We can't have this take place conceptually prior to Dark Fate. This is my stand-in copy for Dark Fate. So I think what you have to do instead is make this the last movie after whatever may come with the rest of the Terminator franchise. I think that's what you have to do, but let's see. But if this one... But then there'd be no future that would send back the T-800, because Dark Fate wiped out the continuity that created the T-800s. I can't quite make it... I have to see all these movies again in order to figure this out. There's a way in my headcanon that I can retain all of these movies and in some way have them all be recognized, even as timelines change and stuff like that. I think the key is that there are two T-800s that need to be sent back in time. There needs to be the one reprogrammed by the Resistance to rescue and protect Sarah Connor in Terminator Genesis. Okay, Pops. Pops needs to be sent back by the Resistance while there is still a future in which the T-800 model is being made. Okay, and then there also has to be the T-800 sent back that succeeds in killing John Connor. And so I think that it can work because what they show here is that a T-800 will still exist in our timeline even if he arrives here and after his arrival at some point, his future is destroyed. His future is eliminated. And speaking of a thought I forgot to mention in the car, Terminator Salvation planted the seeds for augmented humans as well. I feel like in terms of their content, the things they want us to forget, Terminator 3, Terminator Salvation, and the TV series all had concepts in them that Dark Fate picks up and runs with, And so I feel like content-wise, they owe a good amount of concepts in Dark Fate to the very pieces of entertainment they want us to ignore. And I don't like that. Anyway, I'm thinking there has to be some kind of story in my head about a contingency plan. Maybe a Skynet contingency plan, that if they see, if they get reports maybe from their Terminators in the present, that in some way can send signals or messages or whatever that will be preserved and that they'll be able to pick up on in the future, if that makes any sense. Kind of like putting a time capsule in the ground, except maybe in radio waves in space or something like that they can pick up on. I know, I'm having to invent a whole lot of crap to make this work in my head, but this is what you do. This is what fans do when they really enjoy something and they see problems with it in terms of its continuity. You enjoy it, and so you work it out in your head canon. It's like my friend in college who loved Star Wars so much but could see the matte boxes around the TIE fighters, and so she and her friends just said, "Oh, those are the deflector shields." So this ought to tell you how much I enjoyed not just this movie, but how much I enjoy this franchise as a whole. So I'm thinking there's some kind of contingency plan that if they get hints that things are going south, then before the timeline gets wiped out, then they send out a contingency time traveler, a T-800 or something. I guess the Resistance sent that one. Could they have a contingency plan? I don't know. I gotta work this out. Problem is, once I get it worked out, I'm not gonna feel like it's worth it to post it because that doesn't really fit with the theme of my channel and my content, my other content and stuff, Some other geek is going to come up with this, I'll bet. And dang it. Really want this to work. I'll at least put something on the forums if I work something out in my head, which I am really going to try hard to do. But I've gotten a little bit further. I want your food for thought on this. Don't just tell me, just ignore such and such movies, Pater. Let's work together. How can we make this work? Let's do some creative thinking. All right, that's it. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing. So I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening.